Speaking of learning from mistakes, the issue of pension reform is facing just about every local government anywhere you look. That's certainly true in Marin County. Who's got it right? Who's got it wrong? Who's got a big problem ahead of them?
There's a group called Citizens for Sustainable Pensions, which are an organized citizens group, bipartisan, which has the benefit of having some volunteer retired actuaries on their committee. Who would have expected that would happen? You know, they are doing and are releasing an analysis of what they believe are the correct numbers for the 11 municipalities in the county's pension system. It should be very interesting because it's going to put them all on a lot of pressure. They got extra pressure next year because, you know, the accounting rules for all municipalities, in Sonoma County, Napa, and Marin, all the counties we serve, all the counties in America, are going to have to actually disclose truthfully to the IRS what the pension unfunded liabilities are. That's a big deal.
And that's something that people have not necessarily been forthcoming with,
even
if they agree on it.
That would be an understatement. I think some of the agencies don't know. And if you use the wrong assumptions, you come up with the wrong answer. Or too high assumptions, too liberal assumptions, as the case might be. Too high a return on investment than what you really get. It mucks up the math.
Now, the more conservative element in Marin County is probably more alarmed about this. How big a factor are they going to be? How big an issue is this going to be in the various municipal elections that are coming up?
There are several candidates in some of the municipal elections that have made that a hallmark of their campaign. It's not just the pension obligation, but also the health care costs of retirees that has become an increasing issue. And as Dick mentioned, the rate of return assumed, if it's more towards, say, the CalPERS number of 7.75% a year, the obligation looks a lot smaller. But if it is more conservative, such as using the risk-free rate, then the obligation looks a lot bigger. So some of the cities may be in more trouble than they would originally suspected.
So how much is the issue is arguing about what the problem is or the scale of the problem versus how to address the problem regardless of what size it might be?
The interesting thing is that these pension reformers have put it on the table. It's now an issue. And everybody verbalizes there's a problem, we're working on it. You know, the only question is, are they really doing anything meaningful? And
that's not all that reassuring, is it?
Well, no, it's not, because I think it's pretty well acknowledged that between a rock and a hard place. California law says that once an employee starts working for a municipality or a special district or any public agency, the pension is a promise, unless you can't pay for it, unless the system collapses, basically. And it's a race to see if most people will get out of the system before it collapses, because at some point it's not going to make it. And so, you know, will it happen today? Will it happen 20 years from now? You know, the pressure is on, though. Candidates have to address the issue. And 5-10 years ago, they didn't have to address the issue.
Even 3 years ago, I think it wasn't as much an issue. In 2010, it was just being started to be talked about in some of the elections, but people didn't understand the issue as well. I think it was not something that every person on the street kind of knew about. And now people are really seeing there have been cities that have filed for bankruptcy, Vallejo, Stockton, and it's become much more part of the public conversation.
What was the assumption for a time that this was a Sacramento problem and it didn't necessarily come home to roost in my own backyard?
I think for some folks, I think groups that have come up, like the pension reform people in Marin County, have emphasized that's not so. That each agency, from a sewage district to a parks district to a county to a city, they set their own pension reforms. And you can see some communities out there that are actually in pretty good shape.
So who's doing it right and who's got a problem?
Well, I haven't seen the report yet, and that's exactly what the report's going to say. When I talked to them earlier, I said, you know, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys? That's what we want to know, because you can't model yourself on somebody else. They have responded, which is kind of interesting. You want to look at how to do it right? Look at private sector union plans. An interesting response. Look at the federal government's plan. It's not very controversial. It's part defined benefit, part defined contribution. But I thought the comment, look at private sector union plans. Look at the operating engineers' plans. They have to be sustainable. The operating engineers will go broke if they're not. So it's a very, very different world in the private sector, even private sector unions. So I found that a very kind of interesting direction to go to.